Well, every year, the Small Business Administration takes 1 week to celebrate independent businesses with fewer than 500 employees, better known as small businesses. According to the SBA, over 99% of companies in the U.S. are small businesses, representing 46% of all jobs. And this year's theme, Empowering Business Owners for the Future, aims to, quote, recognize the hard work, resilience, entrepreneurial spirit. But small business owners also face challenges. Holly Wade, NFIB Executive Director, joins me now to break down some of the hurdles that small businesses are currently facing here. According to the NFIB's latest jobs report, labor continues to be a challenge here. Why is that?
So the labor shortage for a number of industries is still historically very high, and that includes construction, transportation, manufacturing. They've been having a hard time finding and attracting qualified applicants for historically high levels of job openings over the last number of years, but it has continued into 2025, and there doesn't seem to be much sight at the end of the road for them. Unfortunately, they have a lot of demand. They have a lot of work on the books. It's just filling those positions is becoming very difficult for them.
How is lack of clarity around trade policy weighing on small businesses from what you're hearing and getting a pulse check on?
So tariffs are adding a lot of uncertainty to small business owners, whether they anticipate being directly impacted, if not already, or indirectly impacted, whether that's because they're in the supply chain of the supply chain, or whether they are just anticipating a slowdown in economic activity that might impact them. So the level of uncertainty, again, is historically very high. It's been high for a while, but it continues to be so, just with kind of different issues that are facing them that they don't quite know yet how or to the degree of which some of those policy shifts will impacting them.
While we're talking about policy, one of the other major policy implications for small businesses could be what comes forward in the negotiations and hopefully ultimate netting out of a return to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act 2.0, we should say. And, as we're thinking about that, that has yet to really have a course charted for it yet. What are small business owners looking for there?
Sure. So they're looking for permanency for those Tax Cut and Jobs Act provisions that are set to expire at the end of 2025, especially that 20% small business deduction that's been so helpful for them to retain more profits, reinvest those profits into their business, especially over the last number of years where economic conditions have been quite a roller coaster for a lot of them, including trying to absorb high inflation that are impacting their business. We still hear from a good number of small business owners saying inflation is a driving factor, big problem for them in operating their business. So retaining those savings through the TCJA from 2017 will go a long ways in helping them and avoid a tax increase in 2026.
To what extent are you hearing from small businesses that they're still concerned about concerned about inflation to the extent that they have to pass it on to consumers and consumers push back on price, to the extent that they even have to take that on for their own expenses as well?
Certainly. So it's impacting them in all sorts of ways, including increasing compensation for their employees and increasing those salaries for entry-level positions. So a lot of increases in pricing and cost inputs kind of across the board in their various business operations. And we're still seeing elevated levels of small business owners saying that they have increased prices, planning to increase prices to absorb those higher costs. So about between a quarter actually about 17% of them are saying that inflation is still their single most important problem. That's off where it used to be a couple of years ago, thankfully, where we saw upwards of a third of our members saying that inflation was their biggest problem, but still very elevated levels. And so they're having to absorb those prices, pass along those costs, but it's becoming more difficult as everybody is experiencing a lot of price fatigue out there.
And just lastly, while we have you, consumer sentiment sliding, how are small business owners preparing for what their businesses need to do in order to circumvent a major impact?
So again, that is one of the contributing factors to the level of uncertainty that they're having to deal with. And because of that, they are reining in spending. So they're retaining more profits, not investing as much in their business. And so we're seeing lower capital spending plans, lower hiring plans for small business owners as they brace themselves in anticipation of what might come next. And, to the degree to which some of these, especially trade policy shifts, will impact them. So they are reining in spending and being a little more cautious with their wallet.